What happens when a cold business arrangement becomes the most passionate love story of a lifetime? Anna never imagined that saying "I do" to a stranger would lead her to the question that would change everything. May I continue? On their wedding night, two souls who barely knew each other discovered that sometimes the heart writes contracts the mind never planned. But would this unexpected connection survive the storms that lay ahead? If this story has already sparked your curiosity, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments where you're listening from. Your support means everything to us and helps us bring you more heart-touching stories like this one. The sound of bells echoed through the ancient stone church, but to Anna, each toll sounded like a countdown to the unknown. Her fingers trembled as she adjusted the lace veil that had belonged to her grandmother, the only genuine thing in this moment that felt like a well-dressed nightmare. On the other side of the altar, Grayson Walker waited with the rigid posture of someone who closed million-dollar deals, not someone getting married. His gray eyes quickly scanned the room, checking details with the precision of an executive before settling on her. For an instant, something seemed to waver in his gaze, but it disappeared as quickly as a shadow. "You look beautiful," her father murmured in her ear, but Anna detected the tension in his voice. He knew, just as she did, that this marriage was the only thing preventing the complete bankruptcy of the family business. 3 generations of hard work couldn't simply vanish because the market had crashed. "Dad, she began, but he interrupted her with a gentle squeeze of her hand. "You're stronger than you realize, sweetheart, and sometimes what begins as necessity can become something beautiful." Anna wanted to believe those words, but when her eyes met Grayson's again, all she saw was calculated distance. He wasn't there for love, desire, or even sympathy. He was fulfilling his part in an agreement that would benefit both families. He would gain a socially suitable wife for his public appearances, and she would gain financial security in exchange for her freedom. The pastor began the ceremony, his words echoing through the space like a distant echo. Anna could barely concentrate, her mind spinning between the scent of white flowers decorating the church and the subtle smell of Grayson's cologne, something woody and expensive that reached her even with the distance between them. "Anna Marie Collins," the pastor's voice brought her back to reality. "Do you take Grayson Walker as your husband, to love and honor him, for richer and for poorer, in sickness and in health, till death do you part?" The silence seemed to stretch for an eternity. Anna felt all eyes on her, from family, friends, and the high society that had attended more out of curiosity than affection. Her throat was dry, and for one terrible moment she considered saying no and running away. But then she remembered her father's tired face, the mounting bills, the employees who depended on the family business. She took a deep breath, lifted her chin, and spoke with a voice firmer than she expected. "I do." Grayson watched her with what could have been approval, or perhaps just relief. When his turn came, he responded with the same professional firmness he would use to close any important business deal. "I do." The rings were exchanged, cold golden circles that felt more like shackles than symbols of unity. When the pastor announced, "You may kiss the bride," Grayson leaned toward Anna with measured movements. The kiss was chaste, quick, more a protocol greeting than an act of intimacy. Even so, Anna felt a shiver run down her spine at the contact of his lips with hers. For a second, their eyes met up close, and she could see small laugh lines around his gray eyes, signs that behind the cold facade, there was a man who had genuinely smiled at some point in his life. "Mrs. Walker," he murmured against her lips, and the title sounded strange, like clothes that didn't fit right. The reception passed like a fog of empty congratulations, diplomatic toasts, and forced smiles. Anna played her role perfectly, the radiant bride, grateful to have won one of the country's most eligible bachelors. But inside, she felt like an actress playing a part she hadn't rehearsed enough for. Grayson, meanwhile, moved through the party like a king in his realm, greeting businessmen, politicians, and socialites with the ease of someone born for that world. Occasionally, his eyes would meet Anna's across the room, and he would nod politely, like a business partner acknowledging the other party in the agreement. "How does it feel being the new Mrs. Walker?" asked Margaret Ashworth, one of high society's matrons, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "It's an honor," Anna replied, choosing her words carefully. "Grayson is an extraordinary man." "Oh, without a doubt. So different from his first wife, don't you think?" Deborah was so vibrant, but perhaps he prefers something quieter now. Anna felt the words like small barbs, but maintained her smile. She knew about Deborah. Everyone did. The divorce had been a scandal that occupied the society pages for months, but hearing the comparison so directly was like a cruel reminder that she was just the second choice, the safe option. Later, when the last guests finally left, Anna found herself alone in the room of the mansion that was now her home. Her bags had already been brought and unpacked by efficient servants who worked like silent shadows. She was taking off her pearl earrings when she heard a soft knock at the door. "Come in," she said, expecting it to be one of the maids. But it was Grayson who appeared, having already changed from his tuxedo into casual clothes, dark dress pants and a white shirt with rolled-up sleeves. He looked younger this way, less intimidating, though his eyes maintained the same careful distance. "I wanted to talk to you about our situation," he said, closing the door behind him. "I think it's important we establish some guidelines." Anna turned completely to face him, still wearing her wedding dress. "Guidelines? We're intelligent adults who've entered into a mutually beneficial agreement. We don't need to complicate things with unrealistic expectations." He paused, as if choosing his words carefully. "You'll have your own life, your own interests. I'll have mine. At social occasions, we'll be the perfect couple. At home we'll be polite strangers," Anna finished, her voice more bitter than she intended. Grayson studied her for a moment, and she could swear she saw something like uncertainty cross his face. "It's simpler that way, less complicated for both of us." Anna nodded slowly, though something inside her protested against the coldness of the arrangement. "And about other expectations? Physical intimacy?" Grayson's jaw tightened slightly. "There's no pressure in that regard. When and if you want to, it will be your choice." There was something in the way he said it, an unexpected gentleness behind the formality that made Anna look at him with new eyes. Perhaps there was more to this man than the cold mask he presented to the world. "Thank you," she said softly, "for making that clear." He nodded, already heading toward the door, but stopped with his hand on the handle. "Anna, I know this isn't what you dreamed for your life, but I promise I'll try to make things as comfortable as possible." And with that, he left, leaving Anna alone with her thoughts and the disturbing feeling that maybe, just maybe, there was hope that this cold arrangement could become something more. But as she finally took off her wedding dress and carefully hung it in the closet, one question echoed in her mind. Could a man who had been hurt once learn to love again? The beachfront mansion in North Carolina looked like something out of a dream, with its wide porches facing the ocean and the constant sound of waves crashing against the rocks. But to Anna, sitting on the edge of the king-size bed in the master bedroom, this tropical paradise felt more like a golden prison. 2 days had passed since they arrived for their honeymoon, and the tension between them was almost palpable. Grayson maintained his respectful distance, treating her with the cold courtesy of a guest at a luxury hotel. He worked during the day on his laptop, took important calls, and at night retreated to the house's study, leaving Anna alone with her thoughts and the hypnotic sound of the sea. "This is ridiculous," she murmured to herself, watching the golden reflection of the sunset on the water. She was wearing a light white cotton dress that danced gently with the sea breeze, but she felt as if she were wearing invisible armor, something that protected her but also isolated her. That night, after another silent dinner on the porch where they only talked about safe subjects like the weather and the beauty of the landscape, Anna decided she couldn't pretend this situation was normal anymore. Grayson was in the study, as always, when she knocked softly on the half-open door. "May I come in?" He looked up from the documents scattered on the desk, and for the first time in days, she saw something beyond professional courtesy in his gaze, perhaps surprise or curiosity. "Of course," he said, closing his laptop and leaning back in his chair. "Is there a problem?" Anna entered, closing the door behind her, and approached slowly. The soft light from the desk lamp created interesting shadows on his face, softening the hard lines he always maintained. "Grayson, we need to really talk," she said, surprising herself with the firmness of her own voice. "This isn't working. He frowned. What exactly? This, she gestured between them. This distance, this coldness. I understand our marriage isn't conventional, but we're two adults trapped in an agreement. At least we could try to be friends. Grayson studied her for a long moment, his fingers drumming silently on the desk. Friendship wasn't in the contract. Neither was mutual unhappiness, but here we are. For a second, Anna could swear she saw a flash of something like amusement in his eyes. You're not what I expected, he said finally. What did you expect? A submissive wife who would be satisfied with expensive jewelry and unlimited credit cards. He stood up, walking to the window that overlooked the ocean. Most women would be. I'm not most women. Anna approached him, stopping at a safe distance but close enough to feel the warmth of his presence. And you're not what I expected either. What did you expect? He asked, echoing her earlier question. A cold, calculating tyrant who would treat me like a decorative object. She paused. But you've been kind, respectful, even thoughtful in your own way. Grayson turned to face her, and for the first time, his defenses seemed a bit lower. Kindness isn't something people often attribute to me. Maybe you don't let people get close enough to see it. The silence stretched between them, charged with unspoken tension. The sound of the waves outside seemed louder, more insistent, as if the ocean itself was asking them to open up. Anna, Grayson said finally, his voice lower, more intimate. Do you know why my first marriage ended? I know what the papers said. Incompatibility, irreconcilable differences. He laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. The papers were kind. The truth is that Deborah cheated on me with my best friend and business partner, not just once, but for years. And when I found out, they tried to convince me that I was the problem, that I was too cold, too distant, too focused on work. Anna felt her heart tighten at the raw pain in his voice. Grayson, I'm so sorry. The worst part is, they were right, at least partially. I was distant. I was focused on work. But I thought love meant trust. That when you love someone, you don't need to be watching, questioning, doubting. He ran his hand through his hair, messing it up in a way that made him look vulnerable. Apparently I was wrong. You weren't wrong, Anna said softly. They were. Love should mean trust. It should mean honesty. Grayson looked at her intensely, as if trying to read something in her face. Why are you telling me this? Because, Anna took a deep breath, gathering courage. Because I need you to know that I would never do that to you. No matter how our marriage began, I took my vows seriously. And because I've never been with anyone before. The confession came out faster than she intended, and she saw Grayson's eyes widen slightly. You mean, I'm a virgin, she said, the words coming out like a brave whisper. At 23 in the 21st century, I'm a virgin. Not for extreme religious reasons or because of some trauma, just, I never found someone who made me want to take that step. Grayson was silent for so long that Anna began to regret being so honest, but then he took a step toward her, his eyes never leaving hers. Anna, he said, and there was something different in his voice, softer, warmer. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to know that if we ever decide, if we want to try to make this marriage real in every way, it will be because we both really want to, not out of obligation or expectation. Grayson raised his hand slowly, as if asking for silent permission before gently touching her face. His fingers were surprisingly warm against her skin. You're extraordinary, he murmured. Brave and honest in a way I'd forgotten existed. Anna's heart was beating so loud she was sure he could hear it. Grayson, can I ask you a question? He said, his thumb gently tracing the line of her jaw. Anything. If you ever decide you want to try, that you want this to be real, would you let me know? Anna felt something melt inside her at the vulnerability in his voice. This powerful man, feared in business, was asking permission like a nervous teenager on his first date. What if I told you that maybe I'm already thinking about it? Grayson's eyes darkened and she saw his pupils dilate slightly. Anna, not tonight, she said quickly, but soon, when we're truly ready, when it's no longer about a contract or obligation. Grayson nodded slowly, his hand still caressing her face. When you're ready in your time, What about you? She asked. Will you be ready to risk again? To trust? He leaned closer, his forehead almost touching hers. With you? I think so. I think you might be the person who teaches me to believe in love again. The kiss that followed was different from the chaste peck at the altar. It was gentle, exploratory, charged with promise and possibility. When they finally separated, both were breathing irregularly. We're two strangers trying to figure out how to be married, Anna whispered. Then let's figure it out together, Grayson replied. And for the first time since they'd met, his smile was genuine and warm. Later that night, when Anna finally returned to the bedroom, she sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the moon's reflection on the water outside. For the first time since the wedding, she felt a spark of hope glowing in her chest. Maybe, just maybe, this cold agreement could become something beautiful after all. But first, they would have to learn to trust, not just in each other, but in the possibility that love could be born from the most unlikely circumstances. And as she listened to the sound of the waves outside, Anna wondered if the heart really understood contracts, or if it simply knew when it found a soul willing to take the risk alongside it. 3 nights later, the moment finally came naturally and inevitably, like waves reaching the shore in their perfect rhythm. Anna was on the bedroom balcony, watching the stars reflected in the dark ocean, when she felt Grayson's presence behind her. "Can't sleep?" he asked, approaching with 2 glasses of wine in his hands. "It's hard to sleep when your mind won't stop spinning," she admitted, accepting the glass with a grateful smile. The wine was smooth, with notes of red fruits that danced on her tongue. "What are you thinking about?" Anna looked at him, noticing how the soft moonlight softened his features. He was wearing only a t-shirt and shorts, more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. "About us. About what we're becoming." Grayson positioned himself beside her on the balcony railing, their arms touching lightly. The simple contact sent an electric current through Anna's entire skin. "And what are we becoming?" he asked, his voice low and intimate. "Something I didn't expect," she replied honestly. "Something that scares and excites me at the same time." They remained silent for a few minutes, just savoring the wine and each other's company. The night air carried the salty smell of the sea mixed with the scent of tropical flowers from the garden. "Anna," Grayson said finally, setting his glass aside and turning to face her completely. "I'd like to ask you something." She also set her glass aside, her heart beginning to beat faster. "What is it? Do you still want to wait?" The question hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning. Anna felt her cheeks flush, but maintained eye contact with him. "No," she whispered. "I don't want to wait anymore." Grayson raised his hand, gently caressing her face. "Are you sure? We can go slow. We can stop at any moment." "I'm sure," she said, covering his hand with hers. "But Grayson, I need you to be patient with me." "All the time in the world," he promised, leaning in to kiss her softly. What began as a tender kiss quickly deepened, years of loneliness and repressed desire finding release. Grayson gently guided her back into the room, his hands never stopping their caresses, his lips murmuring words of encouragement against her skin. "If you change your mind at any point," he said, as his hands found the hem of her light dress. "I won't change my mind," Anna interrupted, surprised by her own conviction. "I want this. I want you." The night that followed was a revelation for both of them. Grayson was incredibly gentle, guiding Anna through each new sensation with patience and care. When they finally reached the crucial moment, he stopped, looking deeply into her eyes. "May I continue?" he asked, his voice rough with contained desire. The words that would change everything, the question that transformed a business agreement into something deeply intimate and real. "Yes," Anna whispered, her hands intertwining behind his neck. "Please, continue." What followed was a dance of mutual discovery, where 2 wounded and cautious hearts finally allowed themselves to be vulnerable. Grayson murmured sweet words against her skin, promising he would take care of her, that he would make her feel cherished. And Anna, in turn, showed him a tenderness he had forgotten existed. Later, lying entwined under silk sheets, Anna traced lazy circles on Grayson's chest, listening to his heartbeat calm down. "How do you feel?" he asked, kissing the top of her head. "Complete," she replied honestly. "For the first time in my life, I feel complete." Grayson pulled her closer, and Anna could feel satisfaction radiating from him. "You're incredible," he murmured against her hair. "Absolutely incredible." They fell asleep like that, bodies intertwined, hearts finally beginning to open to the possibility that maybe, just maybe, this arranged marriage could become something magical. But when Anna woke the next morning, she found the bed empty and cold beside her. She sat up slowly, pulling the sheet to cover her naked body, and heard sounds coming from the bathroom, the faucet running, the discreet noise of someone getting dressed. Her heart, which had fallen asleep full of hope, began to contract with inexplicable anxiety. Grayson emerged from the bathroom fully dressed, dark suit, tie perfectly aligned, hair impeccably styled. He looked ready for a business meeting, not like a man who had spent the night making love to his wife. "Good morning," he said, his voice polite but distant, as if he were a courteous stranger. "Good morning," Anna replied, confused by the drastic change in his behavior. "Are you going out?" "I have some calls to make, urgent company matters." He picked up his laptop and some documents from the desk, carefully avoiding looking directly at her. "Breakfast will be served on the balcony in an hour." And then he simply left, leaving Anna alone and naked in the bed that still carried his scent and the intimate memories of the previous night. An hour later, Anna came down to the balcony, wearing a light blue dress, her heart still heavy with confusion and something that was beginning to feel like hurt. Grayson was already seated at the table, reading the newspaper and drinking coffee as if it were just another business breakfast. "Did you sleep well?" he asked without looking up from the newspaper. The casual question after the intimacy they had shared was like a slap in the face. Anna sat in silence, serving herself fresh fruit that suddenly lost all flavor. "Grayson," she said finally, unable to bear the tension any longer. "About last night." "What about last night?" He finally looked up, but his expression was neutral, almost professional. Anna felt her cheeks burn. "It was special for me. I thought maybe it had been for you too." Grayson folded the newspaper carefully and stared at her with those grey eyes that had been so warm the night before, but now seemed as distant as the ocean on a winter morning. "Anna, I need to make some things clear," he said, his voice taking on the business tone she had learned to dread. "What happened last night was pleasant, but I don't want you to develop unrealistic expectations about our arrangement." The words hit Anna like stones. "Unrealistic expectations? We're two adults who entered into a mutually beneficial agreement. The fact that we now include physical intimacy doesn't change the basic terms of our contract." He took a sip of coffee, as if he were discussing stock market shares. "We'll still have separate lives, separate interests. At social occasions, we'll be the perfect couple. At home, we'll maintain a respectful distance." Anna felt as if the ground had disappeared from under her feet. "Respectful distance? After what we shared last night?" "What we shared was sex, Anna. Good sex, I admit, but still just sex." His voice was clinical, devoid of any warmth. "Don't confuse physical intimacy with emotional intimacy." Humiliation burned in Anna's cheeks, quickly followed by a rage she didn't know she possessed. She stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. "I understand," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "So, I was just another conquest for you, a way to pass time during our mandatory honeymoon." For the first time, something like emotion crossed Grayson's face, perhaps regret or guilt, but it disappeared quickly. "That's not what I said." "You didn't need to say it. It was quite clear." Anna stared at him with blazing eyes. "But let me clarify something, Mr. Walker. Maybe you can compartmentalize your feelings like lines on a spreadsheet, but I don't work that way. What happened last night meant something to me, and I won't pretend it didn't." Grayson watched her move away from the table, his expression unreadable. "Anna, wait." "No," she said, turning to face him one last time. "You made your position very clear. Now let me make mine clear too. I won't be your decorative doll that you take out of the box when you need company and put away when you're done. If this is how you want things to be, then you'll have to earn my respect back because you just lost it completely." And with that, Anna left the balcony with her head held high, leaving Grayson alone with his cold coffee and the disturbing feeling that maybe he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. Later, while walking alone on the beach, Anna finally allowed the tears to come, but along with the pain of rejection, there was something stronger growing in her chest: determination. If Grayson Walker thought she would accept being treated like an object, he was very wrong. The war was just beginning. 2 weeks had passed since they returned from their honeymoon, and the Walker mansion had become a silent battlefield. Anna had established her residence in the east wing of the house, while Grayson remained in his quarters on the main floor. They communicated through servants and polite notes, like diplomats from warring countries. Anna had transformed the smaller study into her personal refuge, where she spent mornings reading and afternoons planning her silent revenge. If Grayson wanted a decorative wife, she would be anything but that. On Thursday morning, while having tea in the garden, Anna was surprised by the arrival of Margaret, the elderly housekeeper who had run the house with military efficiency for over 15 years. "Sorry to interrupt, Mrs. Walker," said Margaret, her hands clasped nervously. "But I need to speak with you about something delicate." Anna gestured to the chair beside her. Margaret was one of the few people in the house who treated her with genuine warmth, and her worried expression piqued Anna's curiosity. "What's troubling you, Margaret?" The older woman sighed deeply. "It's about Mr. Grayson, ma'am, and about what happened with his first marriage." Anna felt her pulse quicken. "What do you mean?" "I know it's not my place to speak about Mr. Grayson's personal matters, but—" Margaret looked around as if afraid of being overheard. "You're different, good, and I see how he looks at you when he thinks no one is watching. How does he look at me?" "With hunger, ma'am. Not physical hunger, but hunger for something he lost long ago." Margaret leaned forward. "Mrs. Deborah nearly destroyed that man, and not just financially." Anna set her teacup aside, all her attention focused on the housekeeper. "Tell me what really happened, Margaret." "Mr. Grayson wasn't like this when he was younger," Margaret began, her words carefully chosen. "When he married Deborah 8 years ago, he was different, warmer, more open. He loved her madly, ma'am, absolutely madly." "And what changed?" "Deborah never loved him back, at least not in the same way. She loved what he represented, the money, the status, the power. But the man behind all that?" Margaret shook her head. To her, he was just a means to an end. Anna felt a pang of compassion even through her anger. And the affair with his partner, Marcus Thornfield. He was Mr. Grayson's best friend since college, his business partner, practically a brother. Margaret's voice hardened. For 3 years, he and Deborah had an affair right under Mr. Grayson's nose, and when he finally found out— Margaret paused, as if the next words were difficult to pronounce. "How did he find out?" Anna asked gently. "He came home early from a business trip. Found them both in his bed, ma'am, the bed he shared with Deborah." Margaret wiped away a tear that had escaped. But the worst was yet to come. Anna waited, her heart tight with pain she hadn't yet heard. When he confronted them, they didn't apologize, they showed no remorse. Instead, they said it was all his fault, that he was too cold, too distant, that he was never emotionally present. Margaret shook her head in disgust. Deborah had the audacity to say that she deserved to be truly loved, and that Marcus gave her what Grayson never could. "My God," Anna murmured, feeling nauseous. "But the betrayal didn't stop there, Mom. Marcus tried to steal the company. He had been collecting confidential information, clients, trade secrets. The plan was to destroy Mr. Grayson financially and start a rival company with Deborah by his side." Anna stood up abruptly, beginning to pace back and forth. Everything was starting to make sense. Grayson's coldness, his need for control, his inability to trust. "He fought for 3 years in court," Margaret continued, "not just for the divorce, but to save his company, his reputation, everything he had worked for. And during all that time, Deborah and Marcus spread rumors about him, that he was a terrible husband, a dishonest business partner, a man incapable of real love. How did he manage to prove his innocence? He hired private investigators. They discovered that Marcus had forged documents, embezzled funds, violated dozens of confidentiality laws. When it all came to light, Marcus was arrested and Deborah, well, she lost everything." Anna stopped pacing, staring at Margaret. "And Grayson? He won, technically. He kept his company, his reputation was cleared, he received a multi-million-dollar settlement. But the man I knew—" Margaret shook her head sadly. That man died in that room when he found the two of them together. What remained was this hardened version, this cold mask he wears now. Why are you telling me this, Margaret? The older woman stood up and approached Anna. Because I see how he looks at you, ma'am. And more importantly, I see how you look at him. There's love growing there, even if you're both too stubborn to admit it. There's no love, Anna said, but her voice sounded unconvincing even to herself. He made it very clear during our honeymoon that I'm nothing more than a convenience. That's fear talking, not his heart. Margaret gently touched Anna's arm. That man is terrified of loving again, terrified of being betrayed, of being hurt, of discovering he's not worthy of being loved. Then why did he marry me? Because you were safe, a business arrangement. No emotional risk, no vulnerability. Margaret smiled sadly. But then you showed yourself to be different from what he expected. You showed yourself to be real, honest, brave. And that terrified him even more. That night, Anna couldn't sleep. Margaret's words echoed in her mind, painting a completely different picture of the man she had married. Grayson wasn't naturally cold. He had been broken, betrayed in the cruelest way possible by people he trusted completely. At 2 in the morning, she got up and walked silently through the mansion's corridors, her bare feet silent on the cold marble. Without consciously thinking about it, she found herself in front of Grayson's office door. Light leaked from under the door. He was still awake. Anna knocked softly. "Come in," came his tired voice. She opened the door and found him sitting behind the desk, still wearing his day clothes, but with his tie loosened and hair disheveled. Piles of documents were scattered around him, and a half-empty bottle of whiskey sat beside him. "Anna," he said, surprise clear in his voice. "It's late. Something wrong?" "Yes," she said, closing the door behind her. "Many things wrong." Grayson straightened in his chair, his expression becoming cautious. "What do you mean?" Anna approached slowly, stopping on the other side of the desk. "Margaret told me about Deborah and Marcus." The change in Grayson was instant and dramatic. His face paled, his muscles tensed, and something dangerous flashed in his eyes. "Margaret had no right to—" "She had every right," Anna interrupted. "Because I'm your wife, and I deserve to understand why you're trying to keep me at a distance. You don't understand anything about this. Then explain it to me." The words came out louder than Anna intended. "Explain to me why a man who was tender and caring with me during our honeymoon suddenly became a cold stranger the next morning." Grayson stood up abruptly, walking to the window. "Because I can't go through that again," he said, his voice so low she almost didn't hear it. "Go through what again?" He turned to face her, and for the first time since they'd met, Anna saw real fear in his eyes. Loving someone who's going to betray me. Trusting someone who's going to use that trust against me. Being vulnerable with someone who's going to shatter my heart into 1,000 pieces and then say it was my fault. The silence that followed was loaded with pain and raw truth. Anna could see the struggle happening behind his eyes, the desire to trust fighting against years of self-protection. "Grayson," she said softly, taking a step toward him. "I'm not Deborah." "I know that," he whispered. "Then why are you punishing me for her sins?" The words hit their mark, and Anna saw when they found their target. Grayson closed his eyes, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. "Because," he said finally, "if I let you in completely, if I let you love me and then discover I was wrong about you, it would kill me. It would literally kill me." Anna felt tears burning her eyes at the raw vulnerability in his voice. This powerful man, this feared magnate, stood before her completely emotionally naked, admitting his greatest fear. "What if you're wrong?" she asked softly. "What if I'm exactly who I say I am?" Grayson opened his eyes, meeting hers. "Then I'm the luckiest fool in the world." "Yes," Anna said, a small smile touching her lips. "You are." And for the first time in weeks, she saw something like hope growing in his gray eyes. 3 weeks had passed since the conversation in the study, and something had subtly changed in the atmosphere of the Walker mansion. Grayson still maintained his cautious distance, but Anna could feel the walls around him beginning to crack. Small gestures, a cup of coffee left on her desk in the morning, a book he had mentioned appearing in her room, glances that lasted a second longer than necessary. Anna, for her part, had stopped running from him. Instead, she began a silent and patient campaign, to show that she was different, that she could be trusted. She asked about his day, shared stories from her own childhood, left small encouraging notes in his documents. It was a delicate game of approach, like two wounded animals learning to trust again. On Thursday night, a fierce storm hit the region. The wind howled around the mansion like a wild creature, and rain beat against the windows with violent force. Anna was in her room trying to read, but the constant thunder made it impossible to concentrate. It was almost midnight when the lights went out. The mansion plunged into complete darkness, only the occasional lightning providing brief moments of visibility. Anna lit some candles she kept on her nightstand and was searching for more when she heard a knock at her door. "Anna?" Grayson's voice came muffled through the wood. "Are you okay?" She opened the door and found him there, completely drenched. His clothes clung to his body, drops of water dripped from his dark hair, and there was something wild in his eyes, as if the storm outside had awakened something primitive in him. "Grayson, you're soaked!" she exclaimed, pulling him into the room. "What happened?" "I was walking," he said, his voice hoarse. "I needed fresh air and then the rain. I just kept walking." Anna grabbed a soft towel from the bathroom and began drying his hair, not thinking about the intimacy of the gesture. "You'll catch pneumonia. You need to get out of those wet clothes." Grayson watched her work, her gentle hands drying his face, her eyebrows furrowed with concern. "Anna, don't talk," she said softly. Just let me take care of you for a moment." He closed his eyes under her touch, and Anna could feel the tension gradually leaving his shoulders. It was as if the storm had washed away his defenses, leaving him vulnerable and raw. "Why were you walking in the rain?" she asked as she continued to dry him. "Because I couldn't pretend anymore," he whispered, his eyes still closed. "I couldn't pretend I don't feel anything for you anymore. I couldn't pretend I don't wake up every morning wanting to knock on your door. I couldn't pretend I'm not in love with you anymore." Anna's heart stopped for a moment, then began beating so hard she was sure he could hear it over the noise of the storm. "Grayson," she began, but he opened his eyes and interrupted her. "Pretending I don't feel anything for you is destroying me," he continued, his words coming out in a torrent, as if they had been dammed up for weeks. "Every morning I wake up thinking about you. Every night I go to sleep wishing you were in my arms. When you smile at the servants, when you read in the garden, when you leave little notes in my papers, every little thing you do reminds me of why I'm losing the battle against my own feelings." Anna stopped drying him, her hands trembling slightly. "Why is this a battle?" "Because I'm afraid," he admitted, his voice breaking slightly. "I'm afraid that if I give myself completely, if I lower all my defenses and confess how much you mean to me, you'll realize I'm not worthy of it. That I'm not worthy of being loved." Tears began to burn in Anna's eyes. "Oh, Grayson." "Deborah was right about one thing," he continued, as if the words were being torn from his chest. "I am cold. I am distant. I don't know how to be the kind of husband a woman like you deserves." "Stop," Anna said firmly, placing her hands on either side of his face, forcing him to look at her. "Stop that right now." Grayson stared at her, raw vulnerability stamped on every line of his face. "You want to know what I see when I look at you?" Anna said, her voice intense and fierce. "I see a man who works 16 hours a day to protect the jobs of hundreds of people. I see a man who remembers that I like my coffee with cinnamon and always makes sure it's on the tray. I see a man who was betrayed in the cruelest way possible and still had the courage to marry again, even if it was through a contract." She moved closer, their faces inches apart. "You're not cold, Grayson. You're hurt. There's a big difference." Her thumbs caressed his wet cheeks. She didn't know if from rain or tears. "And as for not being worthy of being loved, you're wrong. So completely wrong. Anna, I love you," she said, the words coming out like a powerful confession. "I love you, Grayson Walker. Not your money, not your status, not the security you offer. I love you. The man who is kind to the servants, who works late because he cares too much, who was vulnerable with me even when it terrified him." Grayson stared at her, as if she had just confessed the most unbelievable secret in the universe. "You can't love me," he whispered. "You don't even really know me." "Then let me know you," Anna pleaded. "Stop hiding behind those walls. Stop punishing me for what other people did to you. Let me love you, Grayson. Let me show you that not all women are like Deborah." For a long moment they just looked at each other, the storm outside roaring around the mansion as if trying to tear the secrets from their hearts. Then, as if a dam had finally burst, Grayson pulled her against him and kissed her with desperate passion. It was a kiss of years of loneliness, of weeks of denial, of a man finally allowing himself to feel again. "I love you too," he murmured against her lips. "God, I love you so much it hurts." "I love you so much I'm afraid my heart will explode." They kissed again, softer this time, more reverent. Anna's hands found the buttons of his wet shirt, and he didn't protest when she began to unbutton it. "Are you sure?" he asked, echoing the question from their honeymoon. "More sure than I've ever been of anything in my life," she replied. What followed was different from their first night together. There was no hesitation, no fear, just two people who had finally stopped fighting their feelings and surrendered completely to each other. Grayson loved her like a starving man, whispering confessions of love against her skin, promising never to pull away from her again. Anna responded with her own passion, showing through every touch, every kiss, every movement, that he was wanted, that he was worthy, that he was loved. Later, when the storm had finally calmed and they lay entwined in bed, Grayson traced lazy circles on Anna's bare shoulders. "I was so wrong about you," he murmured in the darkness. "So completely wrong." "How so?" "I thought you'd be like all the other women I'd known, interested only in what I could give you, but you—" He paused, searching for the right words. "You were interested in who I am underneath all of this. You saw through my defenses and still decided I was worth it." Anna turned in his arms so she could look at his face in the soft light of the candles that were still burning. "You are worth it, Grayson. You always were worth it. How can you be so sure?" "Because," she said, smiling softly, "my heart recognized yours from the first day. Even when my mind was confused, my heart knew." Grayson pulled her closer, burying his face in her hair. "Promise me something." "Anything. Promise you'll never give up on us. No matter how difficult things get, no matter how many times I mess up because I'm still learning to trust, promise you won't give up." Anna kissed his chest, right above his heart. "I promise, but only if you promise the same thing." "I promise," he whispered, "forever." And as they fell asleep in each other's arms, the storm finally calming outside, both knew they had crossed a line from which there was no return. They were no longer two strangers trapped in a contract. They were two people in love who had chosen to fight for their love. But what they didn't know was that other storms were forming on the horizon, storms that would test their union in ways they couldn't yet imagine. 6 weeks after the stormy night that changed everything between them, Anna woke up with a strange feeling of nausea that sent her running to the bathroom. Grayson, who now shared her bed every night, woke up alarmed at the sound of her vomiting. "Anna, sweetheart, are you okay?" His voice was loaded with concern as he knelt beside her on the cold bathroom floor, holding her hair back. "Must have been something I ate," she murmured, accepting the damp towel he offered. But even as she said it, a suspicion began to form in her mind, a possibility that left her simultaneously terrified and hopeful. "I'll call Dr. Richardson," Grayson said, already getting up to reach for the phone. "No," Anna grabbed his arm. "It's not necessary. It's probably just a stomach bug." But for the next 3 mornings, the same thing happened. Anna would wake up, run to the bathroom, and Grayson would be by her side, holding her hair and murmuring soothing words. On the 4th morning, she could no longer deny the obvious. "Grayson," she said, when she finally felt well enough to stand up, "I need to go to the pharmacy." "For what?" he asked. But there was something in his eyes that suggested he was also beginning to suspect. "You know for what?" she said softly. The pregnancy test was hidden in her purse, like an explosive secret all morning. Grayson had left for the office, after insisting she stay home and rest. But Anna knew she wouldn't be able to relax until she was certain. At 2 in the afternoon, she finally gathered the courage to take the test. 2 minutes felt like 2 hours as she waited for the result, pacing nervously around the bathroom. When she finally looked, 2 clear pink lines confirmed what her heart already knew. She was pregnant. Anna sat on the edge of the bathtub, the test trembling in her hands. A baby. She and Grayson were going to have a baby. The idea was both magical and terrifying. How would he react? They had barely begun building their relationship on solid ground, and now this. A baby would change everything. Their dynamics, their expectations, their entire future. Anna spent the rest of the afternoon trying to find the right words, trying to imagine all of Grayson's possible reactions. When he came home at 6 o'clock, she still hadn't decided how to tell him. "How are you feeling?" was the first thing he asked, kissing her forehead and checking for signs of fever. "Better," she lied, her nerves making her stomach churn again. During dinner, Anna could barely eat, pushing food around her plate while Grayson talked about his day. She could feel him watching her, noticing her distraction. "Anna, what's going on?" he finally asked, setting his fork aside. "You've been acting strange since I got home." "I'm not acting strange. You are. You've barely touched your food, you're playing with your wedding ring, and you've sighed at least 15 times in the last 10 minutes. Grayson leaned forward. "Whatever it is, you can tell me." Anna looked at the man who had become everything to her, his grey eyes full of genuine concern, his attentive posture, the way he truly saw her and cared. How could she be afraid to tell him? "Grayson," she began, her voice coming out more shaky than she intended. "Do you remember when we talked about the future? About what we wanted from our life together?" "Of course. Why?" "You mentioned that maybe someday we could think about expanding our family." Grayson became very quiet, his eyes never leaving her face. "Anna, I took a test today," she said quickly, before she lost her courage. "Actually, I took 3 tests. They all gave the same result." The silence that followed seemed eternal. Grayson didn't move, didn't blink, barely seemed to breathe. Anna felt panic beginning to grow in her chest. "Grayson, say something, please." Slowly, as if emerging from a trance, Grayson stood up from his chair. For one terrible moment, Anna thought he was going to leave the room, run from the news like he had run from feelings. Instead, he walked around the table and knelt beside her chair, taking her hands in his larger, warmer ones. "Are you saying," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "that we're expecting a baby?" Anna nodded, tears beginning to form in her eyes. "Yes, we're expecting a baby." The transformation in Grayson's face was instant and complete. Surprise gave way to pure joy, then to wonder, then to something that looked like reverence. "A baby," he repeated, as if testing the words. "We're going to have a baby." Are you happy?" Anna asked hesitantly. In response, Grayson stood up and pulled her into his arms, spinning her through the air while laughing, a sound of pure joy that Anna had never heard from him before. "Happy? Anna, I'm ecstatic. I'm terrified and ecstatic and completely in love with you." He set her down gently, his hands immediately going to her still flat stomach. "There's a little person growing here. Our little person." "Are you sure you're ready for this?" Anna asked, covering his hands with hers. "I know we didn't plan this so soon." "Anna, look at me," Grayson said, framing her face with his hands. 6 months ago, I was a broken man who thought I could never love or be loved again. You changed that. You changed me. And now—" His voice failed with emotion. "Now we're going to bring a new life into the world, a life created from our love." Anna's tears finally overflowed. "I was so afraid you'd be scared." "I am scared," he admitted, wiping her tears with his thumbs. "I'm absolutely terrified. I don't know anything about being a father. My own father wasn't exactly a role model." Anna remembered the few times Grayson had mentioned his childhood. A distant and critical father, a mother who died when he was young, a cold and privileged but emotionally barren upbringing. "You'll be an amazing father," she said with conviction, "because you already love me in a way I thought would never be possible. And if you can love like that, you can teach our child to love too." "Our child," Grayson repeated, a silly smile spreading across his face. "God, that sounds good." They spent the rest of the evening making plans, dreaming aloud about the future. Grayson was already talking about converting one of the spare rooms into a nursery, about schools and college funds, and teaching the child to swim in the ocean. "Do you think it will be a boy or girl?" he asked as they lay in bed, his hand resting protectively on her stomach. "I don't know," Anna said, covering his hand with hers, "but I hope it has your eyes." "And I hope it has your heart," Grayson replied, kissing her shoulder. Your brave and generous heart. Grayson. Yes? You said you didn't know anything about being a father, but I can tell you one thing you're already doing right. What's that? Anna turned in his arms so she could see his face. You're present. You're here. You care. You want to be part of all of this. That's already more than many children have. Grayson pulled her closer, his voice rough with emotion when he spoke. I promise you, Anna, and I promise our baby, that I'll be the father I never had. I'll be present for every important moment, every milestone, every tear and every smile. And I promise we'll be a real family, Anna replied. Not a contract or an agreement, but a real family built on love. A family, Grayson murmured, as if savoring the word. Our family. As they fell asleep that night, both with hands protecting the new life growing between them, neither could imagine that dark forces from Grayson's past were already moving to threaten not just their love, but their future family. Deborah's ghost wasn't finished haunting their lives. Anna was in the baby's room, which had become her favorite project over the last 2 months, organizing little yellow and white clothes when Margaret appeared in the doorway with an expression she had never seen before, something between fear and fury. Mrs. Walker, Margaret said, her voice tense. There's a woman at the front door. She says she's Mr. Grayson's first wife. Anna's blood ran cold. She was 4 months pregnant now, her belly beginning to show a gentle curve, and the last thing she expected was a confrontation with the ghost of Grayson's past. Where is Grayson? Anna asked, trying to stay calm. Still at the office. He doesn't know she's here. Anna took a deep breath, placing a protective hand over her belly. Have her wait in the visiting room and call Grayson. Ma'am, perhaps it would be better. Margaret, Anna said firmly, this is my home now. And if she wants to talk to us, she'll do it through proper channels. 15 minutes later, Anna descended the main staircase with the posture of a queen prepared for battle. She had carefully chosen her outfit, a navy blue dress that highlighted her pregnancy without being obvious, pearls that had belonged to Grayson's mother, and a confidence she didn't know she possessed. The woman waiting for her in the visiting room was everything Anna had imagined and feared. Deborah Walker, because she still used the name, was tall, glamorous, with perfectly waved blonde hair and a body that screamed hours at the gym and expensive plastic surgeries. She wore a white suit that cost more than Anna's old car, and her blue eyes were cold as Arctic ice. So you're the new Mrs. Walker, Deborah said, her eyes scanning Anna from head to toe with barely disguised contempt. I must admit, you're not what I expected. And what did you expect? Anna asked, keeping her voice polite but firm. Someone more sophisticated, someone who understood the world Grayson lives in. Deborah sat down without being invited, crossing her legs as if she owned the place. But I suppose he was looking for something simple this time. Anna felt the sting of the insult but refused to react. What do you want, Deborah? Straight to the point. I like that. Deborah smiled, but there was no warmth in the gesture. I want what's rightfully mine. And what would that be? My husband. The words fell like a bomb in the elegant room. Anna felt like she'd been punched in the stomach, but forced herself to maintain her composure. Your ex-husband, Anna corrected. You divorced over 2 years ago. Ah, but that's where you're wrong, dear. Deborah opened an expensive leather briefcase and withdrew several documents. The divorce was never legally finalized. There was an irregularity in the process, a document that was never properly filed. Technically, Grayson and I are still married. Anna's world seemed to tilt on its axis. That's impossible. Check for yourself, Deborah said, pushing the papers toward Anna. I hired the best lawyers in New York. They confirmed everything. Anna looked at the documents with slightly trembling hands. They were too complex for her to understand completely, but the words decree nullification and valid marriage jumped from the page like daggers. Even if this were true, Anna said, forcing firmness into her voice, what do you want? Money? Deborah laughed, a crystalline and cruel sound. Oh, my dear naive girl, I don't want Grayson's money. I want Grayson. He would never go back to you. Not after what you did. Are you sure about that? Deborah's eyes gleamed with malice. Men like Grayson, they always return to what they know. And he knows me very well. knows every inch of my body, every moan, every way to make me happy. Anna felt nauseous, but didn't know if it was from the pregnancy or Deborah's venomous words. Besides, Deborah continued, what kind of life can you offer him? You're a small-town girl who doesn't know the difference between a Monet and a Manet. How can you compete with someone who was born for this world? I don't need to compete with anyone, Anna said, finding her voice again. Grayson chose me. He chose you because I wasn't available. Now I am. Deborah leaned forward. And there's something else you should know. Anna waited, her heart hammering against her ribs. That baby you're carrying, there's a good chance it's not Grayson's. The air left Anna's lungs as if she'd been physically struck. What did you say? Oh, yes. I did my research on you, dear Anna, and I discovered some interesting things about your life before Grayson, that college boyfriend. What was his name again? David? You met with him a few times after you married Grayson, didn't you? That's a lie, Anna whispered, but her voice sounded weak even to herself. I have pictures, Deborah said casually, as if she were discussing the weather. The two of you having lunch together, entering the same hotel, leaving 3 hours later. Anna remembered the day Deborah was referring to. David had appeared out of nowhere, begging to meet, saying he had something important to tell her. She had agreed to lunch with him, only to discover he wanted to rekindle their relationship. She had categorically refused and left, but I never betrayed Grayson, Anna said, her voice growing in strength. Never. And you know that. I know that. You know that. But will Grayson know? Especially when he's been betrayed before. Deborah smiled cruelly. Men like him never really get over the first betrayal. It marks them forever. It was at that moment that Grayson burst into the room, his presence filling the space like a storm. His eyes went immediately to Anna, checking if she was okay, before turning to Deborah with icy fury. Get out of my house, he said, his voice low and dangerous. Hello, Gray, Deborah said, standing gracefully. You look good. Marriage seems to agree with you. I said, get out of my house. Ah, but that's the problem, Deborah said, her smile widening. It's not your house, it's our house, because technically, we're still married. Anna watched the blood drain from Grayson's face as Deborah pushed the legal documents toward him. This is impossible, he said, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. Check for yourself. I hired Hartwell & Associates. You know them. They're the best in matrimonial law. Deborah approached him, her voice becoming seductive. This means your marriage to her is null, Gray. It means that baby she's carrying is illegitimate. Enough, Grayson roared, and Anna had never seen him so furious. Don't you dare talk about my wife or my child. Your wife, Deborah laughed. Oh, Gray, you were always so naive. Are you sure it's your child? Because I have some interesting information about your wife's secret meetings with ex-boyfriends. Anna saw the exact moment when Deborah's words hit their target. She saw doubt flash in Grayson's eyes, saw old wounds opening, saw years of emotional progress threatening to crumble in seconds. Grayson, Anna said softly, you know who I am. You know I would never do that to you. For a moment he looked at her, and Anna saw the war happening behind his eyes. Love fighting against fear, trust battling against past trauma. I know, he said finally, but his voice sounded less convinced than Anna had hoped. Deborah smiled like a cat that had just caught a mouse. I'll give you time to process all of this, but not too much time. My lawyers will be in touch soon. She walked toward the door, stopping only to look over her shoulder. Oh, and Anna, you might want to start looking for a new place to live. Once the divorce is nullified, you'll be considered a, how can I put this delicately, a usurper. And with that, she left, leaving Anna and Grayson alone in a silence loaded with doubt and pain. Anna looked at the man she loved, seeing the walls rising around him again, seeing fear and suspicion returning to his eyes. Grayson, she began, but he raised his hand. I need to process this, he said, unable to look into her eyes. I need to call my lawyers, check these documents. Do you believe her? Anna asked, her voice breaking. After everything we've been through, do you really believe I betrayed you? Grayson finally looked at her, and Anna saw her answer before he said a word. I want to believe you, he said softly, but he didn't finish the sentence, but he didn't need to. The but said everything. Anna felt her world crumbling around her, felt the love she had built so carefully beginning to crack under the weight of doubt and fear. The war for her marriage had begun, and Anna wasn't sure she would survive the battle. 6 months after Deborah's devastating appearance, Anna found herself sitting in the defendant's bench of a federal courthouse, her 7-month belly impossible to hide under the conservative black dress she had chosen. Beside her, Jonathan Pierce, the best matrimonial lawyer Grayson's money could buy, organized stacks of documents with the precision of a general preparing for war. The last few months had been hell: investigations, depositions, and sensational headlines. The media had latched onto the story like vultures: business magnate in bigamy scandal, the real Mrs. Walker rises, bastard baby, or legitimate heir. Anna looked across the courtroom aisle to where Grayson sat with his own legal team. They had barely spoken in recent weeks, every conversation being filtered through lawyers and press representatives. The distance between them seemed insurmountable, built on foundations of doubt and fear. "Remember," Jonathan murmured in her ear, "stay calm. Only answer the questions asked and don't let Hartwell provoke you." Richard Hartwell, Deborah's lawyer, was known for his aggressive tactics and his ability to destroy witnesses on the stand. He was a tall, thin man with silver hair and eyes that seemed to calculate the monetary value of every word spoken. Across the aisle, Deborah sat like a queen on her throne, wearing a white dress that screamed innocence and purity. Her hair was pulled back in an elegant bun, and she occasionally dabbed at non-existent tears with an embroidered handkerchief. "All rise," announced the bailiff. "This court is now in session, with the Honorable Judge Patricia Thornton presiding." Judge Thornton was a woman in her early 50s, known for her sharp intelligence and intolerance for legal manipulations. Anna had prayed she would be able to see through Deborah's lies. "Please be seated," said the judge, adjusting her glasses as she examined the documents before her. "This is a complex case involving the validity of a divorce decree and, subsequently, the legality of a second marriage. Mr. Hartwell, you may present your opening." Hartwell rose with the confidence of a man who had never lost an important case. "Your Honor, this is a case about justice and truth. My client, Deborah Walker, was the victim of a clerical error that invalidated her legal divorce from Grayson Walker. For 2 years she lived believing her marriage had ended, only to discover that in the eyes of the law, she is still the legitimate Mrs. Walker." He gestured dramatically toward Anna. "The woman sitting there is not a wife, but a concubine. The child she carries is not a legitimate heir, but a child born of an illegal union." Anna felt each word like a stab, especially when she saw some jury members nodding. "Furthermore," Hartwell continued, "we will present evidence that this union was based on fraud from the beginning, that Anna Collins married Mr. Walker under false pretenses and subsequently betrayed him with an ex-boyfriend." "Objection!" Jonathan stood up. "Unfounded allegations." "Overruled," said the judge. "Continue, Mr. Hartwell." "Thank you, Your Honor. When we're finished, it will be clear that my client is the victim of an elaborate conspiracy to steal what is rightfully hers: her husband, her home, and her position in society." When it was Jonathan's turn to present the defense, Anna could feel cold sweat running down her back. "Your Honor, members of the jury, this case is not about legal technicalities or bureaucratic errors. It's about a desperate woman trying to use the legal system to undo the consequences of her own actions." Jonathan pointed to Deborah. "Deborah Walker destroyed her marriage through betrayal, lies, and attempted financial sabotage. Now, facing the consequences of her choices, she seeks a second chance at the expense of innocent people." Anna felt a spark of hope. "We will prove that the alleged clerical error was actually a deliberate manipulation orchestrated by Mrs. Deborah Walker herself. We will prove that Anna Walker is a woman of integrity who married in good faith and never betrayed her husband. And we will prove that the child she carries is, without doubt, Grayson Walker's daughter." The next 3 days were an emotional roller coaster of testimonies. Deborah took the witness stand first, perfectly playing the role of the wounded and abandoned wife. "I loved Grayson with all my heart," she said, her voice breaking at the right moments. "Yes, I made mistakes. Yes, I was unfaithful. But it was only because I felt so neglected, so lonely. Grayson was married to his work, not to me. And what about the allegation that you tried to sabotage his business? Hartwell asked. That's ridiculous. I was a devoted wife trying to save my marriage. Marcus Thornfield manipulated me, made me believe Grayson didn't love me anymore. Anna had to restrain herself from shouting, "Liar," in her face. When it was Anna's turn to testify, her legs were shaking so much she could barely walk to the witness stand. Her heavy belly made every movement uncomfortable, and she could feel the baby moving restlessly, as if sensing its mother's stress. "Ms. Collins," Hartwell began, deliberately refusing to use her married name, "were you aware of Grayson Walker's first wife when you agreed to marry him?" "I knew about the divorce, yes. But you didn't investigate to make sure it was complete and legal, did you?" "I just didn't think it was necessary. Grayson assured me. So you simply assumed. How convenient." Hartwell smiled coldly. "Now, about your meetings with David Morrison after your marriage." Anna felt her heart stop. "They weren't meetings, it was just one lunch." "A lunch that lasted 3 hours at a hotel?" "We talked in the hotel restaurant. I made it clear that our relationship had ended permanently." "But you went up to a room together, didn't you?" "No, that's a lie." Hartwell approached the evidence table and picked up a series of photographs. "Your Honor, I would like to present evidence 15 through 20. The photos were passed to the jury, and Anna saw their faces change as they looked at the images. They were photos of her and David entering the hotel, talking intensely in the restaurant, and a grainy photo that appeared to show them entering an elevator together. "These photos were manipulated," Anna said, her voice rising. "I never—" "You are under oath," Hartwell reminded her coldly. It was then that Anna saw Grayson for the first time in days. He was looking at the photos with an expression she had never seen before, pain mixed with something that could have been discussed. The rest of Anna's testimony was a blur of aggressive questions and cruel insinuations. When she was finally allowed to leave the witness stand, she felt completely destroyed. But the most devastating moment came when Grayson was called to testify. "Mr. Walker," Hartwell began, "do you love your first wife?" "I loved Deborah," Grayson said carefully, "but that ended when she betrayed me." "And Anna Collins? Do you love her?" Grayson hesitated, and that hesitation was like a stab to Anna's heart. "I thought I did," he said finally. "Thought? What changed your mind?" "The evidence suggests that maybe I didn't know her as well as I thought." Anna felt tears burning her eyes. After everything they had been through, after all the promises, he still doubted her. But then Jonathan stood up for cross-examination, and everything changed. "Mr. Walker, these photographs we've seen, did you commission them?" "No." "Did you hire private investigators to follow your wife?" "No." "Then how did Deborah Walker get these conveniently timed photos?" Grayson seemed to realize something for the first time. I don't know." "Mr. Walker, do you remember where you were on the day these photos were supposedly taken?" Grayson frowned, thinking. It was the anniversary of my mother's death. Anna insisted I visit her grave. She said she was going to meet a friend and would meet me later." "A friend or an ex-boyfriend?" "She said it was someone who had something important to tell her. I assumed it was a friend." Jonathan turned to the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen, isn't it convenient that on the day Mr. Walker was emotionally vulnerable, visiting his mother's grave, his wife supposedly betrayed him, and that these photos appeared at exactly the right moment for maximum emotional impact?" Murmurs ran through the courtroom. "One final thing, Mr. Walker. Despite your doubts, despite these photos, do you still believe the baby Anna is carrying is yours?" Grayson looked directly at Anna for the first time in weeks. "Yes," he said, his voice gaining strength. "I believe it's my child." "Why?" "Because," Grayson said, still looking at Anna, "knowing Anna the way I do, even with all my doubts and fears, I can't believe she would do this. I can't believe the woman who showed me how to love again would betray me the same way I was betrayed before." Anna began to cry, not from sadness but from relief. He still loved her. Despite everything, he still believed in her. The turning point came on the last day of the trial, when Jonathan called his surprise witness, Marcus Thornfield. Grayson's former partner was visibly nervous as he approached the witness stand, his eyes carefully avoiding Deborah's. "Mr. Thornfield," Jonathan began, "you are here today under legal immunity, correct?" "Yes," And you have something to tell us about the photographs presented as evidence? Marcus took a deep breath. Deborah asked me to commission them. A murmur ran through the courtroom. She asked me to hire a private investigator to follow Anna. She said she needed something to use against her. And the supposed error in the divorce? Deborah bribed a court clerk to lose a crucial document. The divorce was always valid. She just made it appear that it wasn't. The courtroom exploded in chaos. Deborah stood up, screaming that Marcus was lying, that he had been coerced. Hartwell demanded a recess, claiming his witness was under duress. But the damage was done. The next day, after only 2 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with their verdict. Anna and Grayson's marriage was valid, Deborah had committed fraud, and all accusations against Anna were unfounded. When the judge's gavel fell for the last time, Anna collapsed with relief. Grayson crossed the aisle and pulled her into his arms, whispering apologies in her ears. "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I should have trusted you. I should have known you would never do that." "It's okay," Anna whispered back. "We're okay now. We're a family." But even as they embraced in victory, Anna knew they would need to work to rebuild the trust that had been damaged. Love had conquered lies, but the scars would take time to heal. Across the aisle, Deborah was being escorted out in handcuffs, her tears finally real as she faced charges of perjury, fraud, and bribery. The war was over, but the journey to heal the wounds was just beginning. 4 years had passed since the trial that almost destroyed everything Anna and Grayson had built together. Now, sitting on the renovated mansion's porch, watching her 2 children play in the garden while caressing her 6-month belly with their 3rd baby, Anna could barely believe the transformation their lives had undergone. Michael, now 3.5, was a miniature version of Grayson. Dark hair, penetrating grey eyes, but with the warm smile his father had learned to show again. He was building an elaborate sandcastle in the playground Grayson had installed, his concentration intense as he worked. "Daddy!" Michael shouted when he saw Grayson approaching along the stone path. "Look at my castle! It's as big as our house!" Grayson laughed, a sound that had become music to Anna's ears over the years. "It's impressive, champ, but I think our house is just a little bit bigger." Sophie, at 2 years old, was the complete opposite of her brother. Golden hair like Anna's, effervescent personality, always laughing. She ran, toddling toward her father, her chubby arms outstretched. "Daddy, Daddy, pick me up!" Grayson caught her in the air, spinning her while she giggled. "How's my little princess today?" "I helped Mommy make cookies," Sophie announced proudly. "Really? Can I try one?" "Sure, but first you have to kiss Mommy." "That's the rule." Anna laughed at Sophie's 2-year-old logic as Grayson approached, Sophie still in his arms. "Rules are rules," Grayson said, leaning down to kiss Anna softly. "How are you feeling? Is the baby kicking a lot today?" Anna placed his hand on her belly where a small bump was moving actively. "Someone's eager to meet the family. 2 boys and a girl or 2 girls and a boy?" Grayson asked, as he did every day since they'd discovered they were expecting again. "You know we don't want to find out until birth," Anna reminded him. "I vote for a girl," Sophie declared. "I want a little sister to play dolls with. And I want a brother to help me with my castle," Michael added, never taking his eyes off his construction. Margaret appeared on the porch carrying a tray with iced lemonade and the famous cookies Sophie had helped make. "Dinner will be ready in an hour," she announced, but her tone was warm, not formal as it used to be. The years had softened all of them. "And Mrs. Anna, the nursery is almost finished. The painters finished this morning." "Thank you, Margaret. I don't know what we'd do without you." The older woman smiled. "You've given me a family to take care of. I'm the one who should be grateful." After Margaret left, Anna looked around the transformed property. The cold, formal mansion she had known as a new bride had been completely renovated. The colors were warmer now. Soft golds, warm blues, peaceful greens. Family photographs covered the walls where once there had been only expensive, impersonal art. "Do you remember how it was before?" Anna asked, accepting the glass of lemonade Grayson offered. "You mean when it was a cold mausoleum where I lived like a ghost?" Grayson sat on the swing beside her. "Vaguely. It wasn't that bad." "It was worse," he said, pulling her closer. "It was a place where I existed, but didn't live. Now," he gestured to the children playing, to the toys scattered across the perfectly maintained lawn, to the sound of laughter echoing through the air. Now it's a home. Anna snuggled against him, feeling the solid familiarity of his embrace. The first months after the trial had been difficult. Rebuilding trust doesn't happen overnight. They had gone to couples therapy, worked through their fears and insecurities, learned to communicate more openly and honestly. "You know what I was thinking about today?" Anna said. "What?" "About our honeymoon, about that question you asked." Grayson smiled, remembering. "May I continue?" At the time, I thought you were only asking about, well, about sex. And now I realize you were asking about so much more. You were asking if we could continue together, despite the fear, despite the uncertainties, despite all the obstacles that might appear in our path." Grayson kissed the top of her head. "And what's your answer now?" "Yes," Anna said without hesitation. "Always yes." "Daddy! Mommy!" Michael suddenly shouted. "Come see, there's a hurt bird." They got up, Grayson helping Anna, who was heavier with the advanced pregnancy. Near Michael's sandcastle, a small cardinal had fallen, apparently injured. "Can we help it?" Sophie asked, her big eyes full of concern. Grayson knelt beside the children, examining the bird carefully. "I think so, but we need to be very gentle." Anna watched with a full heart as Grayson patiently explained to the children how to help an injured animal, how to be careful and gentle. The man who had once been known for his business coldness was now teaching empathy and compassion to his children. After they managed to put the bird in a lined box to take to the vet in the morning, the children returned to playing but kept checking the box every few minutes. "You're an incredible father," Anna said as they returned to the porch. "I try. I'm still learning every day." "We both are." When the stars began to appear in the sky and the children were put to bed, Michael insisting on checking the bird one last time, Sophie demanding 3 stories before sleep, Anna and Grayson finally had a moment alone. They were in their bedroom, long since changed from their separate quarters to a shared master suite that reflected both their tastes. Anna was brushing her hair when Grayson approached from behind, placing his hands on her belly. "I love our life," he said simply. "Even when Sophie spills grape juice on your Armani suit. Especially then," he laughed. "You know I had 5 identical suits made after that." "5? Why 5? "1 for each child. I calculated we'd need at least 2 more children for our family to be complete." Anna turned in his arms. "5 children? When did you decide this?" "When I realized that each of our children teaches me something new about love. Michael taught me patience. Sophie taught me joy." He caressed her belly. "And this little one here is going to teach me something new too. What about me? What did I teach you?" Grayson looked at her with that intensity that still made her heart race after all these years. "You taught me that true love isn't about contracts or agreements or protecting yourself from being hurt. You taught me that love is about choosing to trust, every day, even when it's scary." Anna felt tears burning her eyes. Pregnancy hormones always made her emotional. "And you taught me that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unlikely beginnings." They kissed softly, a kiss full of shared history, of battles won together, of a future still being written. "Grayson," Anna said when they separated. "Yes? Can I ask you a question?" He smiled, recognizing the echo of his own words from years ago. "Anything. Do you regret it? How everything started? The contract, the arrangement, all the complications?" Grayson thought for a moment, and Anna could see him mentally reviewing their entire journey. The marriage to strangers, the tense honeymoon, the night in the storm, Deborah's betrayal, the trial, the rebuilding. "No," he said finally, "I don't regret anything. Because every obstacle, every challenge, every moment of pain brought us here. And here," he looked around the room full of family photographs, forgotten children's toys, evidence of a life truly lived. "Here is perfect." That night, as Anna fell asleep in Grayson's arms, the baby kicking gently in her belly, she thought about the extraordinary journey that had brought them there. They had started as 2 strangers, trapped in a convenience agreement. Now they were a real family, built on true love, hard-won trust, and the promise that no matter what storms came, they would face them together. And there was still more to come, more children, more challenges, more joys, More moments of "may I continue" that would take them deeper and deeper into the kind of love that lasts a lifetime. 10 years had passed since that first night on their honeymoon, when Grayson had asked, "May I continue?" A question that had changed the course of 2 lives forever. Now, at 43, Anna was sitting on the same porch of the beach house in North Carolina, where it all began, watching the sunset paint the ocean in golden and pink tones. The main mansion had become too small for the Walker family, which now included 5 children between 3 and 12 years old, so they had bought the neighboring property and transformed it into a family complex where each child had space to grow and explore. Michael, at 12, was on the beach teaching his youngest sister, Emma, age 3, how to build sandcastles. Sophie, at 11, was reading a book under an umbrella, always the little intellectual of the family. The twins, David and Daniel, 7 years old, were running through the water with the infinite energy that only twins possess. "Penny for your thoughts," a familiar voice said behind her. Anna smiled without turning around. Even after all these years, Grayson's voice still made her heart race slightly. "I was thinking about how we got here." Grayson sat beside her, offering a glass of wine, the same type they had shared on that first night when she had confessed to being a virgin. His hair now had silver threads at the temples, and laugh lines marked the corners of his eyes. But he was more handsome now than ever, softened by love, by fatherhood, by life truly lived. "And what are your conclusions?" he asked, intertwining his fingers with hers. "That we're the luckiest people in the world," Anna said, watching Emma try to copy Michael's construction techniques, her little tongue sticking out in concentration. "Or maybe the most stubborn." "Why stubborn?" "Because any sensible person would have given up. 2 strangers forced into an arranged marriage, a man traumatized by betrayal, a woman who knew nothing about his world. The odds were practically 0. Grayson agreed, taking a sip of wine. "Good thing we were never particularly sensible." Anna laughed, remembering all the senseless moments over the years. 5 pregnancies that always caught her by surprise, the impulsive decision to buy that property in Tuscany where they spent every summer, the time Grayson let the children convince him to buy 3 dogs at once. "Do you remember our first night here?" she asked, pointing to the master bedroom window. "How could I forget? It was the night you gave me the most precious gift anyone had ever given me." "What gift was that?" "Your trust," Grayson said, his voice becoming more serious. "That night, when you told me about being a virgin, when you let me be the first, you were giving me your complete trust, and I almost threw it away because of fear." Anna squeezed his hand. "But you didn't throw it away. It may have taken you a while to fully accept it, but we got there." "We did," he agreed. "You know what I was thinking about today?" "What?" "About the question I asked that night. May I continue?" "I did that because I was so afraid of presuming anything, of taking anything for granted." Anna turned to look at him completely. "And now?" "Now I realize that question was never really about sex. It was about permission to love you, permission to open up, to be vulnerable, to risk my heart again." Tears began to form in Anna's eyes. Even after all these years, Grayson could still touch her deeply with his words. "And the answer is still yes," she whispered. "It will always be yes." "Mom, Dad!" Sophie shouted from the beach. "Emma's trying to eat sand again." They laughed, watching Michael patiently redirect his youngest sister to safer activities. The dynamic between their children was fascinating. Each had inherited different aspects of their parents, but all shared the same warm heart they had learned to value. "Remember when we thought one child would be difficult?" Anna asked. "Now we have 5 and it seems easier than when we had one," Grayson replied. "Or maybe we're just crazy." "Definitely crazy, but it's a good kind of crazy." While the children played on the beach, Anna and Grayson remained on the porch, just appreciating each other's presence. These quiet moments had become rare with 5 children, so they treasured them when they appeared. "Anna," Grayson said eventually, "can I ask you something?" "Of course. If you could go back in time to that first night we met in the church, would you do anything differently?" Anna thought about the question, remembering the 23-year-old who had married a stranger out of family duty. So much had happened since then. Love, loss, betrayal, trial, healing, growth, children, joy. "No," she said finally. "I wouldn't change anything. Not even the pain, not even the difficult moments. because all of that brought us here. Even Deborah, the trial, the near separation? Especially that, Anna said with conviction, because that's what proved to us that our love was real. Anyone can love when it's easy. But when your love survives lies, betrayal, public humiliation, fear, when it survives all of that and comes out stronger, that's when you know it's real. Grayson pulled her closer, his arm around her shoulders. You're wise, Mrs. Walker. I was taught by an excellent teacher, Mr. Walker. As the sun set completely, tinging the sky deep violet, the children finally tired and began heading toward the house. Margaret, now retired but still insisting on accompanying them on family vacations, appeared to begin the process of bath time and bedtime. 5 baths, 5 sets of pajamas, 5 bedtime stories, she murmured, but she was smiling. How did you manage to have 5 children? Lots of love and lots of wine, Grayson replied, making Anna laugh. After all the children were in bed, a process that took a full 2 hours and involved 3 stories, 2 lullabies, 1 monster under the bed, which turned out to be Sophie's shoe, and Emma insisting she needed water at least 4 times, Anna and Grayson finally had the quiet house to themselves. They walked hand in hand along the beach, barefoot on the cool sand, the sound of waves creating a perfect soundtrack for their reflections. You know what I learned in these 10 years? Anna asked. What? That love isn't something you find. It's something you build, every day with each small choice, each act of kindness, each moment of forgiveness. And each question of, may I continue? Grayson added. Exactly. Because true love always asks permission. It never assumes, never takes for granted. They stopped walking, facing each other under the starry sky. Grayson held Anna's hands, his eyes reflecting the moonlight. Anna Walker, he said formally, may I continue loving you for the rest of my life? Grayson Walker, she replied in the same formal tone. May I continue loving you through every storm, every joy, every challenge the future brings? Yes, they said together, and then laughed at the perfect synchronization. The kiss they shared was different from the shy first kisses of their honeymoon, different from the desperate kisses during the crisis with Deborah, different from the passionate kisses of new parents. This kiss was something entirely new. It was the kiss of 2 people who had been through everything together and knew with absolute certainty that they could get through anything. You know, Anna said when they separated, I think I finally understand why our marriage started with a contract. Why? Because contracts are about promises, and in the end that's what love is, a promise renewed every day, a choice we make repeatedly to stay, to fight, to forgive, to grow together. Grayson smiled. So our original contract is still in effect? I updated the terms, Anna said mischievously. Now it includes washing dishes, changing diapers, reading bedtime stories, and pretending I believe you when you say you definitely weren't the one who ate the last cookie. Very reasonable terms, Grayson agreed. I accept. They walked back to the house where their 5 children slept safely, where family photos covered every surface, where a lifetime of memories had been built from an unlikely beginning. At the doorstep, Grayson stopped and looked back at the ocean where it all began. Penny for your thoughts, Anna said, echoing his words from hours before. I was thinking, he said, that sometimes the universe knows exactly what it's doing, even when it seems like it's putting us in impossible situations. Like forcing 2 strangers to marry. Exactly, because the universe knew I needed someone brave enough to see through my defenses, someone persistent enough to stay when things got tough, someone with a heart big enough to teach me how to love again. And I needed someone who would show me I was stronger than I imagined, who would love me, not despite my flaws, but including them. They entered the house, locking the door behind them, locking out the world and all its challenges. Inside there was only love, family, and the promise that no matter what the future brought, they would face it together. Because sometimes the heart doesn't understand contracts. It just knows how to love. And sometimes that's more than enough. It's everything. Anna and Grayson discovered that the greatest loves aren't born from fairy tales, but from the courage of 2 wounded souls who chose to heal together. From a cold contract was born a warm family, proving that the human heart can transform any beginning into an extraordinary ending. Sometimes you have to start as strangers to discover you were always meant to be one. And perhaps deep down this story also speaks about all of us. about how true love isn't found but built, one may I continue at a time. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments where you're listening from. And if you felt it was really worth listening to, click the Worth It button. Your gesture makes all the difference and helps us continue bringing stories like this one.